Hi, I'm Naomi. Last Christmas Eve, my father looked me in the eye and said, "Go beg at a shelter." Then he slammed the door. My mother didn't flinch, just poured her wine, like I never existed. They said I was too sensitive, too dramatic, even called me a burden. But this wasn't the first time they erased me. It was just the first time I walked away. What happened next? They never saw coming. Let me know if you'd like a variation with a slightly different emotional pacing or twist. The cold hit harder than I expected. Even for Ohio in December, it felt crueler this year, like winter had something personal against me. I tightened my threadbare coat around my shoulders as I climbed the steps to the front porch. The wrapped bottle of red wine, bought with the last $20 of my final paycheck, shivered in my hands, just like I did. I stood there, staring at the door, a door I hadn't seen from this close in 2 years, a door that used to mean home. Mom had sounded distracted on the phone earlier that week. Her voice clipped, not unkind, but distant. "If you're coming, don't be late. We eat at 6. That was all she said. Still, I'd clung to the idea of tonight, of one peaceful dinner. One evening where maybe, just maybe, they'd see me. Not as the mistake, not as the one who never quite fit, but as their daughter. I knocked once, then again. The door creaked open. And there he was, my father. Same posture, same expressionless eyes. Like the years hadn't touched him at all. His eyes skimmed me, from the wine to the faded scarf, to the look I didn't realize I was wearing. He didn't smile, didn't even nod. "Go beg at a shelter," he said. And just like that, the door slammed shut. Behind him, before it closed, I saw my mother, pouring herself a glass of wine. She didn't turn to look, didn't even blink. No yelling, no questions, just done. I stood there, breath fogging in the air like it was trying to make sense of what had just happened. I didn't cry. I didn't knock again. My hand, still holding the wine, slowly dropped to my side. My feet couldn't move. My mind refused to catch up. I stared at that door like it had spoken a different language. Snowflakes began to land on my shoulders, my hair, my eyelashes. I couldn't even feel them. Somewhere between the porch light and the night sky, I let go of something I didn't even know I'd been holding on to. This was it. There wouldn't be another call, another dinner, another try. That door wasn't just slammed, it was sealed. I walked away slowly, careful not to slip on the icy steps. My boots, secondhand and barely warm, crunched over the salted sidewalk. Every house I passed glowed with Christmas lights, candy canes, snowmen, wreaths. It felt like I was walking through someone else's life. I found myself sitting on a curb at the corner of Mayfield and Broad. I didn't even realize how far I'd walked. I pulled out my phone, stared at my contact list. I hovered over Melissa's name. She'd answer, but it was Christmas Eve. What could I say? "Hey, got rejected by my family again. Want to split a pizza?" I put the phone away. A few years back, I'd walked past a shelter near downtown. I remembered thinking, God, I hope I never end up there. Now I wondered if they'd even have space. The wine bottle slipped from my fingers. It rolled toward the street, the cork popped from the cold, and a slow trickle of red pooled on the pavement. It looked like something bleeding. I didn't chase after it. I just stared at it. This wasn't a movie. No one was going to pull up in a car and ask if I was okay. No one was going to knock on that door and say they'd made a mistake. Some pains don't scream. They whisper. And they whisper until you can't hear anything else. So I walked, past the wreaths, past the homes, past the families laughing over fireplaces I'd never sit beside again. And then, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. I almost didn't check. I figured it was just spam, or worse, a butt dial from someone at a party. But then I heard her voice. "Naomi, this is Margot from work. Call me back. ASAP. It's urgent." I stopped walking. That was the first time in years someone sounded like they needed me. By the time I made it back to my apartment, my socks were soaked straight through. Each step squished inside my boots, and my hands had gone numb from gripping my keys too tight. I didn't turn on the lights when I walked in. The glow from the street lamps through the blinds was enough. That and the flicker from my answering machine, still blinking. The voicemail, Margot. I sat on the couch and hit play again. Naomi, this is Margot from work. Call me back. ASAP. It's urgent. Her voice played once. I rewound. Again. There was something in her tone. Not pity, something closer to alarm. I hadn't spoken to her in almost a year, not since the day I packed my desk in silence while everyone pretended they didn't see. She never laughed when I brought my weird leftovers, never joined the gossip at lunch, just gave a quiet nod when we passed in the hallway. I remembered that. I hesitated, phone in hand. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want someone checking in on the lonely one they remembered from the copy room. But then again, what if it was something real? I dialed. Voicemail. Of course. I left nothing. Just sat there with my coat still on, boots dripping onto the hardwood, heart thudding for a reason I couldn't explain. An hour passed. Maybe more. Then the phone lit up again. Naomi? Her voice was lower than usual. Careful. Hey, Margot. I shouldn't be calling, she said. But I've been holding on to this too long, and after tonight, after what I heard, they can't get away with it. I sat straighter. She went on, choosing each word like it could get her fired. There's an HR investigation underway. Quiet, but serious. It's about dismissals, yours included. I thought you should know. My mouth went dry. Why me? You were one of the first, no warning, no write-ups, just gone. I didn't respond. I didn't trust my voice. They want someone to step forward. You'd have leverage now, if you wanted to. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you deserved better. Because I saw what they did. And because you don't have to be quiet anymore. Her words knocked something loose inside me. I remembered the day I was let go. No explanation. Just a folder, a check, and the look from HR like I'd stolen something. I hadn't said a word. Thought staying silent meant keeping my dignity. You deserve to fight back, Margot said. And you won't be alone this time. After we hung up, I just sat there. Sleep never came. I opened my laptop and stared at an old draft, an email I'd once written to HR, full of everything I wanted to say but never sent. I read it again. This time, it didn't sound like weakness. It sounded like survival. I opened the drawer beneath my desk. The manila folder was still there. Layoff documents, emails, notes I'd written in the margins of training manuals. I laid them out across the floor in rows. Pages of history. Evidence I didn't know I'd kept for this moment. And as I organized, I wasn't angry. I was focused. My thoughts weren't, why did this happen anymore? They were, who else knew? Who else was next? I had waited too long for permission to speak. Maybe now, I didn't need it. At sunrise, I finally stood up. My back ached from the floor, but I didn't care. I showered, plain clothes, pulled my hair back, stared into the mirror, same eyes, but steadier. I brewed coffee, black and bitter, and wrote 3 names on a post-it: James, Terry, Luis. People who had seen things, maybe they'd talk. I opened my email, typed, Margot, I'm in. What's next? And then, I did something I hadn't done in months. I wrote in my journal, just for me. The words came easier this time. Right before I closed my laptop, my phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. You think you can drag us down? Watch yourself. I didn't know who sent it. But I knew exactly who it was meant to scare. Morning light came fragile through the frost-lined window. I woke cold, not just from the night air, but from the echo of what slammed shut behind me. My apartment stayed dark except for the weak glow of a street lamp through the blinds. I shivered and reached for the turquoise mug on the nightstand. It was empty. I held it, letting its chipped rim press against my palm like a memory. A buzz. My phone lit up with a message from Charity, my sister-in-law. A photo, one of the gifts I once gave, wrapped in someone else's name, her handwriting, someone else's handwriting, on the tag. My heart sank. I stared until the image blurred. I dressed quietly, bundled in layers, coat, scarf, gloves. Outside, the air was still but sharp. I caught my reflection in the frosty window before I left. Did I look less than I deserve? The question hovered. Back at the small kitchen table, I opened the closet. Boxes lined the shelf, some labeled with years, names. Mine, not mine, forgotten. Mom, I pulled out the manila folder of old photos and gifts. A scarf I knitted in 2018. Mom smiled, but never wore it. That scarf is now under someone else's coat, I remember. Then, the toy my father promised me when I was 7, wrapped with hopeful hands, now gone, replaced. I flip through photos of past Christmases, me, smiling beside gifts. In newer cards, I'm missing. Just someone who once belonged. My voice in my head whispers, gifts tell the truth, who we are to others. I close the drawer, but my hands linger on an unopened gift I got last year. Porcelain ornament with my name. Still in the box, still dusty. It became my anchor, the only thing I had left that said, I exist. I drive through suburban roads, snow softening corners of streetlights. The car's heater hums. I grip the steering wheel tight. What is a gift, really? Not objects, but acceptance, attention, space in someone's heart. Charity's photo replayed in my mind, the tag with someone else's name over what belonged to me. I ask, who remembers me? Who lets me keep something that was once mine? I dial Pastor Glenn, his voice, gentle, calm, as always. Do you want confrontation or closure? He asks. I think both. Later, I stop by a small ornament shop. The bell chimes as I enter. Pine scent. Hands wrapped in gloves, I reach out to a porcelain ornament. Fragile, with my name etched, barely legible. The shopkeeper, an older woman, watches. If someone truly cared, they would have kept this safe. My heart flares. That ornament was more than a decoration. It was promise, or a lack thereof. I pay more than the asking price. The weight of that moment presses on my chest. I tuck it into my coat. Outside, snow falls. Driving back, the Whitlow house appears through frost-sheathed trees, lights on, warmth glowing inside. I press my thumb to the ornament in my pocket. My phone buzzes with a group chat message. Everyone's at your cousin Everly's. Bring it or don't. My breath catches. I know I have a choice. Show up or stay away. Tonight, I decide I won't let their forgetting define me. Chapter 4. The Gathering Storm. I pulled up in front of Everly's house late afternoon. The snow under my tires squished and slushed. My breath steamed inside the car before I opened the door. I paused, clutching the gift bag with the ornament I bought. The one I told myself was for me, but also for proof. I still have something to offer. The Whitlow home glowed through the windows. Lights wrapped around the porch, music faint inside. Too perfect, too warm for what I knew waited. I stood in the vestibule. The laughter dropped a decibel. Eyes flicked toward me. More than once, I felt a judgment slide across the room, like I was the unwelcome guest in someone else's story. Aunt Teresa hugged me, tight as if she wanted to whisper, "Play along." I forced a smile. Charity, leaning over to Everly, whispered quietly, "She actually showed up?" The snicker reached my ears. My chest burned and I swallowed heat I couldn't swallow away. The table was set like a magazine spread, golden chargers, linen napkins, name cards standing perfectly upright. I glanced at mine, spelled Naomi instead of Naomi. I barely held my tongue. Dad sat at the head of the table, chest out, smiling like nothing had changed. Mom lifted her wine glass, lips curved, eyes empty. I got sandwiched between Cousin Liza and Uncle Roger, both polite, distant, no warmth. The conversation flowed. Who got promoted, whose kid did what, whose vacations cost more. Each sentence was a reminder I wasn't part of the picture. Then Aunt Teresa, trying to be kind, mentioned Pastor Glenn. Says maybe I should stay with the church folk, as though I was halfway there already. The words cut. I pushed food around my plate like it was weight I didn't deserve, like I couldn't swallow anything but silence. Hands shaking, I excused myself to the kitchen. Aunt Teresa followed. She said, "They don't know better. You were always the soft one." Her voice had pity, but pity is a double-edged blade. I remembered past scenes, childhood photos where my hand hovered outside the frame, the door slamming shut last Christmas Eve, gifts given to me that felt borrowed. Back at the table, Charity stood, glass raised. Toast. To those who know how to grow up and stop holding grudges. Laughter. Light clinking of glasses. The world waited for me to applaud. Instead, I stood. My movement startled them. The water glass tipped, splashed over the tablecloth. Silence. Thick enough to choke. My voice quiet, but sharp. "Stop pretending. This dinner isn't peace, it's performance." Dad narrowed his eyes. "Then leave," he muttered. But this time, I didn't flinch. I laid the ornament on the table where everyone could see it. My name spelled correctly across the front. I said, "This is mine, not yours to erase, mock, or give away again." Mom's gaze dropped. Everly smirked, but I held my look steady. "You can laugh, but you will not rewrite me," I declared. I stood, chest heavy, coat slipping open at the front. I left before anyone answered. No, "Are you okay?" No apology. Just the cold air, my breath forming ghosts in front of me. And for once, I felt I wasn't falling apart. Snow fell soft as I walked out. The porch light glowed overhead, wreaths framing the doorway I left behind. My back was stiff. My pulse was steady. Somewhere between shame and anger, I realized they broke me before, but tonight I refused to stay broken. As I reached the sidewalk, a voice called out behind me. "Naomi, wait! There's something you need to see." I paused, hands flush with cold, heart clenching, but didn't turn around. I stepped through the front door. The smell of roasting turkey, cinnamon, laughter, all of it wrapped around me like a lie. Christmas lights sprinkled their glow somewhere overhead. Shadowed faces turned, then looked away. I carried the ornament, careful to not shake, my heart already trembling. Dad didn't nod. Mom poured more wine, slow and deliberate, no warmth in her eyes. Charity lifted her glass, a soft smile curved at the lip. "Glad you made it," she said, like I was an actress stepping onto stage. Zeke's laugh came after hers, polite, distant. My hands floated in front of me, then settled in my lap. I tried small talk, asked about Aunt Teresa's new job, but the room filled with achievements, promotions, vacations, children's awards, voices louder than my existence. The ornament remained in its bag until I placed it at my setting. My fingers shook as I laid it down. The room exhaled without apology. Then Dad slid an envelope across the table. Quiet. Intentional. My name printed on it. I opened it. A $1 bill inside. And a note. "This is all you were worth." Silence swallowed me. Faces looked. No one reached. I stared at that dollar, the paper thin insult, but more cutting was the truth I felt pulsing through it. Shock. So much betrayal. I wanted to throw it, burn it, erase its echo, but I held it. I remembered every time I stayed silent so as not to cause trouble. Every time I begged myself to stay small. Rage cracked inside, but vulnerability wrapped around it like ice. I sipped water, my throat dry. The ache was in my chest. It felt like they saw me finally, and rejected me again. Later, I disappeared into the hall. My heart pounding, I put my hand on the wall for support. I took out the letter I'd written last year, the one I never delivered. I just want to be seen, not perfect, just seen. I opened it now. Tears blurred the ink. I read through every line. Every word felt familiar and raw. The letter was never opened, never looked at. Was that forgetfulness? Or something worse, deliberate erasure? I closed it gently, hugging it against my chest. I thought about how Mom used to read me stories, her voice soft and kind. Now she couldn't even open mine. I folded the paper, hold it close, silent tears trailing down. Hurt ripened inside me, not fresh, but corrosive. Outside, my car waited. Snow fell heavy, covering the world in quiet. I locked the door behind me, coat pulled tight, breath fogging in the night air. I dialed Pastor Glenn. His voice answered, calm, concerned. They used my words against me, I said, voice rough. But they won't use them forever. They fear what they cannot silence, he said. His words steadied something inside me. I sat in the driver's seat, fingers tapping the draft of a post I'd begin to write, a truth laid bare. My hands shook, my heart pounded, but even trembling, there was resolve. I would not remain invisible. Not tonight, I would show up for myself. I opened my phone and began typing, the authenticity craved like oxygen. Then, a sound at the window, a silhouette. Charity's frame, her voice barely audible. You can't just walk away with that. My chest tightened. I returned to the Whitlow house just as the night had swallowed the last light. The driveway was dark, headlights gone. I walked through the hallway toward the living room, heart tight. On the mantel was a photograph I didn't expect, my face replaced by a pet, a golden retriever with its tongue out. A dog. My smile erased. No apology, no admission, just a snicker from Charity, Mom's eyes cast downward. The silence was heavier than words. I tried to laugh it off, asked after Dad's wine glass, made small talk I didn't mean. But my throat felt raw. The photograph mocked me more than anything Dad could have said. I remembered being told, "You're nothing, just me trying to make peace." Those words rode in on every hurt I carried. I forced a smile, sat, made small talk like I belonged. The room smelled of roasted vegetables, wine, the sticky tang of burnt sugar dessert. My mouth tasted like regret. Then Dad raised his glass. "Unstable people don't belong here." Eyes locked on mine. I felt the room hold its breath. A cousin's fork paused. Someone swallowed hard. I sat rigid. Anger thundered in my chest. I thought of every insult unspoken, every time I let silence be safer than confrontation. I remembered reading Eleanor Roosevelt once. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I held that thought like a shield. My voice calm, cold. Unstable. Maybe. But I'd rather be unstable than invisible. The words dropped like stones. I felt them land. After dinner, I slipped out the back door and stood on the porch. Snow fell in soft sheets. I held the turquoise mug in both hands. It burned through my gloves, not warm, but grounding. Memories flickered, holding that mug as a kid when Mom poured hot chocolate, despite cold, despite everything. Am I too wounded for love, too fragile to be part of a family? The doubt stung, all their neglect, their dismissals, letters unanswered. Gifts misused. A childhood spent quiet, waiting. I almost opened the letter I wrote last year, my truth trapped in words that never found a voice. I backed away into the night, keys in hand. I drove out of the neighborhood, headlights cutting through dark trees. I stopped on a narrow bridge over a creek, engine off. Hands cold around the ornament in my lap. I rummaged through my phone, layoff documents, emails from Margot, screenshots, proof I'd kept while I was silent. This was something concrete, not just my heart's ache, but fact. I called Everly, quiet, no anger, just a question. Do you know what it's like to be present but never seen? There was a pause on the other end. I heard breathing, no reply. But something shifted in the silence. I drove until my own apartment came into view. Snowdrifts piled at the steps. I paused. The driveway light flickered on. And there, parked in front, Marshall's car. Unexpected. My breath caught. My heart raced. Morning came slow and gray. I woke to the buzzing, phone lighting up. Since leaving last night, my ribs still ached with the weight of what I'd said and lost. I looked at the group messages from the Whitlows. Some messages mocking, thinly veiled. Others concerned, like a mask. One, maybe too much drama. Another, she made a scene. My chest tightened. I reached for the allergy medicine I never got last night, years of dinners where I teased myself into believing, it's okay, I can eat anything. But eyes watering, throat closing, I was reminded yet again, they forgot. Always. Aunt Teresa, Charity, Dad, a childhood carved by neglect. I remembered standing in the kitchen as a kid, sneeze after sneeze, being told it's just seasoning, told don't make a fuss. Those moments stacking up, I thought, They think forgetting me is nothing. I'll prove them wrong. By noon, I called Aunt Teresa. I told her I felt itchy, throat tight, eyes red. It must have been the nuts or peanut butter spread on the dessert. Her laugh came, soft and dismissive. That's just seasoning, Naomi. Don't worry so much. Dad's voice in the background, muted. She's fine. Charity, texting, insisted, You're overreacting. Every word stung. It wasn't just the food, it was being disposable. I recalled childhood dinners where the same thing happened. Eat what's on the table, then blame me when I couldn't. This oversight, I realized, was not oversight, it was habit. Later that day, leftovers dinner at Mom's house. The family squeezed around the table. Someone sneezed. I reached out for a tissue. Mom took hers and passed it across, to someone else. I hesitated. Everyone watched. Then I swallowed my pride, grabbed my own. Mother did not meet my eyes. I caught the flash, just a bit, of shame in her face. I held back tears. Not for humiliation, but for recognition. I refused to be silent anymore. I realized then, they don't see me, but I see them. I messaged Margot. Allergy report, doctor's note, photos from meals where my throat reacted. I dug up old messages I once sent Dad. You forgot again. I'm allergic. I took screenshots. Pastor Glenn texted, Truth has power when paired with proof. Everly replied privately, I'm sorry I laughed. Her apology wasn't loud. It trembled. It mattered. I packed my bag, prepared for the brunch I'd promised myself I'd attend. From here, not to be present, but to be seen. In the afternoon, a package arrived at my apartment. Small, wrapped in brown paper, no name. I unwrapped it with trembling fingers. Inside, the porcelain ornament with my name, broken in half. I stared at the fracture line. Not just a broken object, but a message. They will try to break me in pieces, but I will build from every shard. I arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes early, parking under the bare winter trees. The pavement echoed with ice crackling beneath my boots. I stood at the entrance, purse heavy against my shoulder, the printed report inside pressed like armor against my ribs. I wanted control today. Inside, the Whitlows were already seated at a large round table, Mom in pearls, Dad in his usual posture of smug silence. I selected my seat with intent, across from Dad, so people couldn't ignore I was here. The scent of cinnamon rolls drifted through the air, fried eggs sizzling somewhere behind coffee steam. It felt like Christmas mornings long ago, a warmth I thought dead. I placed the report on my lap. No napkin at my place card. I noticed, a small omission, but precise. I cleared my throat and passed the report across the table. Cards fluttered, eyes flicked down, doctor's notes, allergy results, screenshots of messages where my absence was expected and accepted. Everly's eyes widened. Dad scoffed. I looked at each face, took a breath. This isn't about food, I said. It's about being unseen, the kind of phrase you whisper to yourself. Charity opened her mouth to interrupt. I raised a hand, not to silence, but to show I wasn't finished. I quoted Maya Angelou. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. My voice was steady. They listened. Not agreement, but attention. This is your chance. Recognize the harm, or I walk for good. The words left my lips sharper than I expected. The table froze. Abigail leaned toward Mom. Dad laughed, soft, dismissive. You always were dramatic, he said, as if having a voice was a performance. Anger pressed under my ribs, my throat dry. I stood. Everly rose, too. She's not wrong, Everly said quietly. For a second, the room split. Those who shifted uneasily, those stiff with defense. I nodded. Choose wisely. I'm done begging to belong. As I turned to leave, Dad followed me outside. Snow fell in all directions. Lights from the brunch interior flickered behind me. He said, You walk now. You don't come back. His words flat. I stopped, breath shaky. I asked, When did you ever let me in? He stepped closer. You'll regret airing our mess in public. His voice low. I stared back. I said, "No." I regret staying quiet for so long. Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I walked away, back unbent, heart pounding. The cold cut through coat, wrist, resolve deepened. That evening, light fading, I heard my phone buzz. Everly's name on screen. "I want to tell you something. Meet me tomorrow. Alone." My stomach twisted. Something was coming. I knew truths change things, especially truths whispered by those who once stayed silent. Everly showed up just after 3, wrapped in the same red raincoat she used to wear when we were kids, and still shared secrets instead of silence. Her hair was pulled back, but a few strands stuck to her cheek from the drizzle. I didn't say much, just pointed her toward the chair across from mine and set the chamomile tea down between us. She cupped the mug like it was the only warm thing left in the room. We didn't speak for a while. Rain tapped the windows in soft, relentless rhythm. I waited. She cleared her throat and looked at me straight, no blinking. "There's something you need to know, and something you should have known all along." Her voice cracked, but she didn't back away from the words. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope, yellowed, creased, sealed. "Mom wrote this before she went numb," Everly said, placing it in my hands. "She meant it for you." I held it like it might burn me. My fingers trembled as I peeled it open. And the ink inside had bled in spots, but the words still held. Mom's handwriting. She talked about her fears, about Dad's temper, about the nights she wanted to stand up for me and didn't. One sentence hit me harder than all the rest. "I thought if I stayed quiet, he'd hurt you less, but silence is its own betrayal." I pressed the paper to my chest and finally sobbed, not from rage, but because someone had finally admitted the truth. Everly didn't rush me. She didn't hug me. She just stayed there, present. After a while, she reached across the table. "You weren't crazy, Naomi. You were abandoned." We talked for hours. About the birthdays I spent alone. About the way jokes were turned into weapons. About how love, in our family, always came with disclaimers. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just offered understanding. I told her I'd been carrying anger like armor. She nodded. "Me too," she said. We both sat in that stillness, the kind that comes after a storm, but feels like something new could grow. I asked if she'd come with me to therapy. "Of course," she said, like it wasn't even a question. A few days later, I was walking down the street near my apartment. Everything was still wet from rain, but patches of sunlight broke through clouds. Daffodils were pushing up through sidewalk cracks, yellow, stubborn, defiant. I signed up for a family dynamics workshop, not to fix them, to heal me. That night, I wrote a letter to Dad. Didn't mail it, didn't need to. "This is what I never said," it started. I burned it in the sink, watched the edges curl into ash. Then I turned to my apartment, took down photos that made me shrink, rearranged shelves, tossed guilt out with the garbage. Mom's letter, I framed it, hung it in the hallway. Not for comfort, for truth, for memory, for proof that even silence can eventually speak. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because I was no longer trying to earn peace from people who never offered it freely. Before bed, I opened the mailbox one last time. Inside was a small box. No return address, just a card. I opened it. "You were never invisible. Mom,